Gandela Gwenji Dogane Rabarjos, Bunde Shuji, Loganja, Sedan Cheba, Nende Jesus. Dungi Nanga Sindrebe Nenden, Juzelaman Gives, Unganjan, Dalot, Sonam Shinjo, Tempergese, Kaja, Chungun Cheba, Gasana, Gingin, Chabe, Hamizab, Tondo Chembet and Delania. Yung Nazo Medo, Danjin, Benaza, Jazon, Julian Jazo, the Sonam Shinjo, Kajitomi, Tune Saba, Lunga, Keberdomba Sumji Media joining Joba Jabu Zaning Medu demanded to Lazon Japan Bede John Comboji Jelabjin Zabala, Jasambata Beran, Gisela Matamba, Canon, Yachugala, Kenze, Chitarzambe Duja Zemala Sabi, Java, Dogage, Nisabin Keva, Dedan Rogan, and Bena Kebra Jizon, Zandrabay, Tembe Ningbo Ringdo, says Mujugunjo, Toman to Memesi. Timmy Kimba Jambayan Dubu Mala, Jimzamenda, Kanji, Vezuya, Losan, Trabe, Shablo, so the Kiwakundo, Yanda, Laman, and Jimmy Chiki Pella. Sadan Lamgi and the Ramzon and Doji Changi, Koban, Yurdo, show. Okay. So today I would like to have also, like an open discussion. Like you can ask me many questions. If Sue, you have a question of a retreat, okay. So. So maybe let's discuss, human motivation, like a human motivation. And without our human motivation, we don't have any energy, kind of driven energy wants to do. We say, I have no motivation, and you feel like really, really lost. No energy, no motivated, no inspiration. Okay. Now, so we seek for motivation. And yes, motivation is important. And I think spiritual practice is way to either healing the motivation, or spiritual practice is to strengthen the motivation, or spiritual practice should become some way to protecting our human motivation. So it's like motivation is the source where once we wake up, what we want to do now, what we want to do future, what we want to, like basically what we want to do for our own self, what we want to do for the world. And I think all that this religion or spiritual practice is a spiritual, this word spirit have a relation or not? Spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. It's a very relation. So our human spirit to nurture, to strengthen. I think this spiritual practice, all this, So I think when we say I want to do practice, I want to do something, I think we need to kind of orient it our own self. This my spirit, my consciousness, particularly my motivation. I want to have something to nurture. And this is what really spiritual practice is, like the water that nurturing the seeds. So here we are getting very clearly our own self. I'm doing this practice for my teacher. I'm doing this my commitment for my Vaja masters, and I think something. I'm doing my daily practice to nurture. Also, not so much myself as not so much very general. If we can get a little bit more specific, my motivation, my intention. I think it will get like much more specific. I think it will be much more better. So now motivation is very wonderful. It gives you energy. It boosts your what you call your strength. It inspired you. Now, here, once it's ready to kind of move our human motivation, what we can make a mistake is that our habit comes. We're motivated, even motivated with a positive intention. Somehow our habit also kind of slips through that one. So, because of that, even positive motivation becomes aggressive. Somehow it loses the warmth, clarity. And slowly our good motivation is a good motivation, but it is so much like, good intention, but don't want to listen for anything. Just wants to, this is what I want to do it. This is, I think, is the best thing. Should be the wonderful. And even there's no, so our motivation is kind of very complex. Once we manage that, I think spiritual practice and all the Dharma practices are fundamentally this driving energy. This wants to do something. This is just to make a, like even a simple thing. If you want to communicate something, you want to communicate. So now here, you want to communicate, even with a good intention, somehow it have an element of aggressiveness kind of comes up. So here, our meditation and our practice is fundamentally our human spirit, our human motivation. I think this need to be kind of like so I think in a daily basis, sometime today we say, I have my back ache, so I want to stretch. We do that. But I think in our daily meditation, we need to find ways to ache into our awareness, consciousness. We're not finding ways to ache, ways to pain, and it becomes so very general and vague. And somehow, I'm taking this medicine, but I don't know, it becomes too general. So it is, I think, in our physical challenge, we get so detailed. In the same way, I think really getting one detail, a little bit, get more clarity, I think that will be very effective. So now, like, okay, I'm just here, I wake up, I come, okay, I eat, I go, again I come back. In Puerto Rico, I have my student, and he said, Rinpoche, I'm doing the same thing again and again, I'm doing the same thing again and again. He has some little bit challenge of depression, so way he managed the depression, every day he will drive for 3 hours. in island in Puerto Rico, there's island from one side of east side of the island to up to the west side of the island. He drive back and forth for 3 hours. And somehow, like, this is one way to somehow, if he don't do that, there is a panic and there's all the anxiety and all that things. Somehow the minute you're in the, you have to follow several things when you're on the road, so there's no option. You have to bring, so certain mindfulness you have to have. So somehow he is also getting tired with doing the same thing again and again. So really, like, okay, are we looking, is spiritual practices about excitement? I don't think so, like, it's not necessarily about excitement. Spiritual practice is keeping the balance of the energy. Every day becomes fresh. Every day becomes kind of new. How to make every day new day? How to, I have this friend, she used to do working in Broadway theater, and she have her own rule. Her own has a script, the characters that she play for 6 months every night. And I say, are you not boring? Every night you're doing the same line that for 6 months. I said, no. Every day is different. Every day is different. Every day she never felt like, oh, no, again I have to do the same thing again and again. So therefore I think, so how it's not so much like how we keep, maybe the spiritual practice is all about, it's not so much like over-excitement, it's just keeping our human motivation and our human inspiration to keep into the balance. Kind of there is a freshness into our spirit and our consciousness. Usually we are looking for something freshness by some new thing. Maybe why people like to go to shopping. Maybe it's something to trying to fulfill our spirit. Maybe it's some kind of spiritual practice. And also the shopping malls. They I think every week they change the how they present. So whoever comes doesn't feel like the old way. So they're also supporting the spiritual practice. So like, like how far, how you say? I think spiritual practice is not to depending external material and condition to shift and to bringing some kind of freshness and balance and driven. Maybe spiritual practice is, can I create within myself something kind of like a freshness? Not so much changing the decoration and something new thing, and all the time something different. Not to get bored. Like, so, like if, like sometimes I have some, usually like for example, when I was growing up in South India, I ate rice and dal for lunch for 16 years. Okay, and so I mean, like even in the West here, if you eat the same thing every day, except the coffee you drink the same time. There's a like, okay, it's boring. Let's make something different. So now I think what really makes our life make boring, and what really can make our life much more kind of alive. I think in the Bodhisattvayana, this bodhicitta, I think this is one example, I think, how to keep every day fresh. Now again, what really mean is, basically, bodhicitta is one of the example of a motivation, which basically, it opened really broad. The intention, the vision is a really broad and expanded. So I think because of that kind of expansion, I think there's a naturally, not necessarily get bored. This kind of feeling like I need something different. When our human motivation is a very specific and narrowed, yes, now you get bored with this specific and we want to change some another specific. So fundamentally, I think somehow can I, so this spirit, this driven energy wants to do something. Like when we are young, we say like, I feel like limitless. Like, because I think, it's like a possibility, seeing infinite. And it's not necessarily bodhicitta, but somehow you feel like I'm still young, I have a space, I have a time, and you have a mindset of a kind of like a feeling, openness. So this is, I think, the training in the meditation, in our daily exercise, in the daily meditation, in our mind. I think infinite possibility. Sometimes we kind of, through habit, we're trying to make a very specific and really easily get bored. And making this infinite. Like, for example, one day I was traveling in Delhi. It was in the summer, it's so hot, and Delhi, and particularly one area, Tibetan camp area, it's a really hot and dirty. And then I saw His Holiness Sakya teaching, he's giving teaching. And I was kind of thinking, I was just too hot, I was kind of looking for air conditioner. And here's His Holiness Sakya teaching. He's mid-70s or late 70s. And here's this in the tent, he's giving initiation, long life initiation. I think it's a fundamental. Then, you can see today's His Holiness, and he's 84, and he's never staying still in Dharamsala. He's a keep traveling all around India, except he said United States and Europe is too far, but still he's not staying still. He's back to Dharamsala. There's the things happening. Okay, then he goes to South India, and. Keeps you fresh. What really, I think, lots of our old age problems, Alzheimer's, many dementias. There's many things. I think, I feel, I'm not sure, I'm not scientist, and I'm not, but I think if there is an exercise of an individual, the mind, the spirit, there's an exercise. If they does much more seeing to visioning much more bigger, not very specific. If there is this kind of a visualization, lots of Bodhicitta meditation also have this visualization. This maybe helps your brain to make a more, scientifically saying the brain is constantly able to do things. It doesn't matter. We need to give a chance. So I think, I think healthy, healthy body and healthy mind. Healthy body, okay, we have so many conditions that we can look at it and see it. Healthy mind, it becomes a little bit complicated. I think we have to come to, bodhicitta is a very specific terminology. In essence, it is a kind of expansion. In essence, it is basically what is happening is we're trying to stretch our body when it's getting aching, and we stretch, and we kind of, do we stretch our mind? Yeah, it's getting achy, it's getting, stiff. And do we ever stretch our mind? Yes, we can do maybe breathing meditation here and there, but breathing meditation may not necessarily give a deep therapy. It's just kind of maybe kind of like a breathing meditation, maybe how you say, padding, where you have an ache or has a toxic, where in awareness. Breathing meditation is maybe kind of like a padding, but in a really to go really deep down and release that tension. Maybe it's that to acupuncture that release. I say, if you have tension, then you put the acupuncture, you can create more tension, or what happens? You can release tension also, huh? And you can bring attention also. You can. So I think. So what I'm saying is maybe we should have some kind of exercise in a daily basis. Not necessarily visualizing Buddhas. If we can go strictly as a Bodhicitta approach, absolutely, there's plenty of things. But the key message over here is, can I do this post for 5 days? Let me see. I will do every. I'm feeling really boring. I'm really feeling really boring to see the same window again and again. I'm really feeling boring to see the same tree again. Can I do this kind of exercise? That's really kind of opening up my spirit. Kind of 3 times a day. Don't have to do 1 hour, but this kind of I would say this can prevent so many things. this kind of like a mind getting kind of like a closing up kind of difficulty, kind of narrowing down and kind of closing it. Instead of that, it is a infinite until infinite. Until you have the life, you have like joyful life. The only options I think is the left is the mind, the spirit. Can we kind of giving a chance for the spirit to our human spirit to breathe? Is there's a song, "Give a chance for peace"? Let's give a chance of peace. The same way, let's giving a chance for our human spirit to breathe fresh air. So I think, yes, it is not trying to ignoring what is the front, the challenge, and things is fully pay attention, but not get sucked into that one. Yes, I'm still, I think in India there's one of my friend, and he will say like, when he's really tired, he just need to go 2 days in the nature, walk around in just nature, and he says just rejuvenate. What's happening, I think, in essentially is not the forest is making different, but basically forest, the nature becomes a condition to some way opening his spirit much more further. Forest and the nature becomes a condition. You can go in the forest, in the nature, but if you bring all the narrow thinking and like this kind of tenseness, nothing can help. So basically, in a long-term solution, without depending going into the forest, can we, instead of you're bringing your consciousness to forest, can we bring the forest, the nature, into your consciousness to back? So anyway, the key point is a daily basis of exercising, of somehow Now the question comes like, if I ask question, what really motivates? What really motivates? Does motivation require direction? Somehow you see that, and yes, I like to do that, and so therefore I'm motivated. And pretty much we can say there's something that really captures, something that you are going to feed. You're going to, so for each motivation can be direct. Or its motivation is human motivation is I say it is a given, and it is a given, or it is a found it. I found my motivation, or can I create my motivation? I found my motivation surprisingly. Can we say that? I found somehow. I was never thinking about that. Somehow I found. There are some you kind of put an effort to creating that vision. And so do you think, okay, if this is the exercise, so we need to get, okay, like a daily basis, how I can get beyond the daily chores. Inside of my all awareness, just investing into the whatever daily chore, can I have some space that I can go beyond that? But something personal. Motivation should be personal. Inspiration should be personal. If something's not personal, can you get inspired? Yes. Something have to be touch yourself, something that really engage yourself, something that you trust, something that you accept, something that you believe. So have to be some kind of personal, isn't it? So, I mean, like personal, I mean, like when you say personal is something that you are kind of serious about it, you are kind of engaging into it. It's personal as a not point of view of not sharing, but it means for me something. I really believe, I really cherish that. So, is this me? So, is my brother calling me? Okay. We keep life busy. We keep life busy. And sometimes, the society forced to keep busy. And do we find purpose into this busy chaos, stressful? Can we find some purpose? We can be really busy, and time can just kind of lose very quickly. And there's a plenty support how to lose the time. At the same time, busy, no time finish very quick. End of the day, feeling a little bit empty. Feeling of, instead of nurture, feeling of loss. What am I doing? What am I doing? So this. So is the blaming for what? Is this did I did something wrong? Is the things that I'm doing still not right for me? Or we will question all these things. This is not right for me? And maybe I should do another one. And then when we did another one, we'll do the same thing again. Question that. One of my students, I told her what I'm doing, and she wrote back, "Wow, Rinpoche, you have a so wonderful job." I told her, "Yeah, yes, that's right. I thought you have a really wonderful job. All the time the grass is other side is all the time green. The grass is other side all the time green." So anyway, yes.
I mean, what I'm hearing you say is it's really important to connect with your motivation. So busyness isn't about physical busyness. It's mental busyness. So we can be quote unquote busy all day long, doing something that's really fulfilling and meaningful. And at the end of the day, we feel really positive and rich spiritually, or we can just sort of do things mindlessly and follow habit, and at the end of the day, we didn't connect with any special motivation, and then we feel really kind of empty and depressed.
Yeah. Now, I think what really fulfills our human spirit, this is, we might have some misinformation. This not inherently say this will going to fulfill. And fulfillment, the way we educating our own self, the way we fulfilled, I think we did a little bit mistakenly. To fulfill. To have an end of the day fulfillment, I have to quantity fulfillment. I have to make a difference in a million people's life. Now, fulfillment, way we educate in a society, how we believe. Yes. So we need to find if that happens. Absolutely, we are not trying to negate. And way to get our human fulfillment should not be narrow into one thing. That I heard today's young generation, what they want to be, they say they want to be famous. Only the one thing was just be famous. I heard like early time they asked what you want to be. I want to be doctor. I want to be lawyer. Now these days, like, I think there's some research they're saying like just wants to be famous. So willing to do anything to just to become famous. So again, fulfillment. End of the day, what can really, and I think again when we ask what really brings me a fulfillment, I'm not sure when we say what really brings me a fulfillment, I'm not sure this is a right approach for the fulfillment. Maybe the way we're approaching what can brings me the most fulfillment is already we're creating, demolishing the fulfillment. So anyway, the fulfillment, how I can create fulfillment for myself. What is the way to this kind of sense of feeling of fulfillment? And if I put very narrow path to my fulfillment, yes, absolutely, I don't want to waste my time. And absolutely, I don't have to have an impact million peoples. I don't have to be known by, millions peoples. Fulfillment, basically, I think the fulfillment is not ruining the present moments of whatever action it is. What I mean that is, whatever I'm doing right now, whatever we're doing anytime, any given time, if we ever ruining that is a judging. Okay, this and that. If they're taking out the negative oxygen will brings, maybe the only option is nothing for us to make a fulfillment. Step number one is taking out the bad oxygen that we're bringing into our daily action, in our daily life. That pollution that we are bringing. It's not so much we're trying to bring in something clean air we have to bring. It's nothing. Maybe the only thing is cutting the pollution will help to bringing the fulfillment. Maybe it's as simple as that. We in our habit, we think maybe I have to do something. What we do more than what we're doing. His time is packed. What is really bad thing happening is a pollution we are bringing with whatever we are doing. So fulfillment, I think the fulfillment. Okay, of course, now over here, it is easy to say, just cut the pollution, change the way of thinking, change the lifestyle. It's not easy, today's environmental problem is we bringing many different recycle and this. Yes, of course, they are still really wonderful, but fundamentally we have to really to make a change. We have to change the lifestyle, like life way we live, we have to change to make a really impact. But still, but I saw one documentary, this rehabilitating the land, like a desert. There's a desert and they rehabilitate it and they somehow it brings green and the water and moisture and it is amazing. So anyway, so now the question comes, I don't feel nourished spiritually. Yesterday I met somebody, she says she's doing healing, and her healing is physical healing, emotional healing, and spiritual healing. So she's specialized into these three things. It's kind of nice, physical healing, emotional healing, and spiritual healing. So So anyway, my key point over here, we have a human motivation. It's really important. And making life so busy, we're trying to, based on that motivation, we make life really busy. But at the end of the day, if we feel really fulfillment, it's wonderful. But difficult to feel the fulfillment, feeling of time kind of running, time slipping from the hand. 2020, 2000, when 2008, when you say 2020, like what is the age? It's like eons. Now like boom, it came so fast, 20. And so time is really moving, and I think it's very important to way we're living. Time is moving really fast, and we need to little bit, attempt really the living way we live, where we kind of where we being alive, can we have some way slight, not just, okay, this is who I am, okay, this is what it is, this is my sentence for this life, so I'm going through. Not necessarily that kind of feeling. Is there's a space or chance we can give for our spirit, for our consciousness, something that, basically, instead of being, okay, this is what it is, this is what's kind of like a very kind of mechanical, or I can opening up, have a more live, more human, So that's the only, I think that, basically all the practice, if we do our daily practice, sadhana and so many things into a very narrow, stressful, then again, I think it's lose the point. It's lose the point. So it had to have this kind of it have to almost, we need to feel it is an exercise, awareness exercise to expansion of our own intention, motivation. Okay, so I think the key thing, what I'm saying is yes, we're mourning, we drink things, we're trying to keep some energy for the physical level. Can we keep some energy and awakening in the mental, in our mind? Because mind is almost treated as a second guess. The first guess is our physical, the mind and our emotion, which is really fundamental, but we put as a second guess. So we gave to our physical, so maybe you will get something from there, but we never give something gift directly for our conscious and our spirit. We don't have any coffee to offer, something to awake, to alert, to be clarity. So I think this whole concept of meditation, what do you think is the meditation is all about? New thinking, old thinking, no thinking?
Is it a question you're asking?
Yes.
I think lately, for me, it's being aware of what my mind is doing. Instead of it just doing, being aware of what the emotions and what the afflictions are. Just being aware of it, and then looking at it, and then I was doing this thing where you look at the emotion. If the emotion comes up, you look at it, and then if you look at it, it just kind of dissolves. It's not really that real.
Mm-hmm.
Grab it. And then you can have the good motivation and the expansion like you're talking about, because it's not that real, the affliction. It's just like a habit.
Uh-huh.
But it's challenging. It's not easy.
So maybe if we look at it, you know, like for example, when I'm getting headache, yeah, because maybe, you know, dehydrated or maybe blood pressure. We see the negative side very clearly, so you counter respond and to, you know, so we see the both sides. You see what is the challenge, what creates the challenge, and then you apply the condition to overcoming that, isn't it? There's the kind of thing. So in the meditation, when you're doing meditation, do we have those same thing? Okay, I see the challenge, and now I'm doing this. You know, like we have to see both sides, isn't it? To meditate. You know, like otherwise we become like a kind of following. You know, yes, I haven't drink enough. I should drink. You know, all we have are this cause and effect understanding. So when we're doing meditation, we have to have some level of a cause and effect understanding. If we don't have this kind of cause and effect kind of relation understanding, then meditation, I'm not sure it will be. So when you say like grasping, yeah, that's great. You know, grasping, which is really one of the challenge, and mind is just kind of let go, you know, trying to let going. Okay, now where we start, from where I should start, because there's too many things to way to correct and to heal. You know, like, should I fix my headache first, or should I fix my hand first? Or should I? Okay, so now my here. Now the key question comes here in a physical level. When you're giving treatment, there's a specific antidote, and also there's a general well-being kind of supporting to able to the treatment can be effective, isn't it? There can be two layers, isn't it? You know, like there's the medicine that supports generally well-being to bringing up more stronger, and then there's a specific. Sometimes, okay, right now this medicine is not right. You have to get into all the levels into that level. Then we'll give the medicine later. You know, there's a different way of looking at that whole thing. And the same way in the mind, I think, is very important when we're doing meditation. We have to see two layers. If we concentrate too much with the specific things, where is the general well-being for our awareness? You know, maybe like, for example, like you're mentioning, if I just looking into it, maybe sometimes this is very helpful, maybe sometimes this is not very helpful. Maybe it's not the right time to look at it. Maybe there is a time that kind of like a generally well-being practice need to be applied. You know, to bring to mind, to able to really kind of get the whole benefit of all this kind of specific method. So therefore, I think in the meditation practice, at the beginning, this is my opinion, not necessarily very specific. I'm arising this specific thought, I'm going to observe these specific thoughts, and trying to kind of like not to see the point. You know, kind of like not to grasp, or, you know, all that kind of thing. I'm not sure. I think at the beginning, even on a daily basis, basically two flavor. One is not non-specific meditation. Is not addressed for specific challenge. Non-specific. So when I said, you know, let me make an example, like you're doing like a half an hour meditation session, maybe 20 minutes non-specific meditation. What I mean that non-specific means it's not about you're trying to watch your thoughts. It's not about specific addressed attention. It is the whole well-being you're trying to make that. So basically undo. Just basically undoing. And then maybe 10 minutes, then you have like a very specific areas that you're going to work it. So I think, like for example, when you're doing meditation, of course, thoughts arise. Should I trying to kind of look into it and there's nothing to kind of be, I think there's no way to avoid the thoughts and emotions. Yes. At the beginning, I think, yes, the main discipline is non-escalating, not doing further. It's just basically minimizing. It's really bringing mind to, basically what I'm saying is not any more kind of like activation at the first. So more the kind of like a non-activated undoing brings better position, whatever specific area that when you're trying to give a focus, compassion, and anything is kind of like. So meditation is it looks like in awareness exercise is creating plenty space as a foundation. Into that plenty space awareness, then you're working into the Pacific. Then it becomes much more effective. It's like like when you're planting the tree or any seeds, you make sure sometimes make sure you have a space to grow the things, even when you're planting in the pot. But at the same time, you make sure it's also go up, not only the root. So it is all kind of like a combination, so therefore, so again, what I'm saying over here is this, going back to this sense of feeling of a spirit, nurture, some kind of like a freshness, is not kind of doing, I think in our daily meditation, in a daily, kind of like awareness, nurturing, having that kind of like undoing and expanding and creating that space. What you call the claustrophobic, too many things happening. It's basically, in one way to right now why I should do meditate, basically we can say I'm claustrophobic with my thoughts. That's the accurate way to, I think. So when you claustrophobic, yeah. Well, step number one, not looking for the details. Get out from, like trying to get out from that space is the fundamental. If we're trying to look into the specifics, you get more further claustrophobic. So I think fundamentally in our daily, so that I think really helps, that kind of, as I'm telling earlier, this is not about the action, it is about the intention. So there is this kind of freshness comes. We feel squeezed and in not having space. It's not so much, not about external space, is awareness space, emotional space. What is really kind of like a clogged. So meditation, fundamental meditation, I think that we need to give a tremendous time. Like for example, people when go to retreat, long time retreat, by condition, creating the condition to not to accumulate thought. Because they get out from the condition, they went to isolate. And at least it gives you the condition to not to accumulate. When you are far from material world, you will not necessarily accumulate material because you are kind of like cut by the condition. In the same way, I think in the meditation is a fundamentally, it is a, our habit immediately lets me bring something. You have already no space in your thoughts and emotions. You're trying to bring in loving kindness, you're trying to bring bodhicitta, you're trying to, and they all are wonderful, but they're also squeezed with another thoughts. Basically, there's no space for breathing. So fundamentally here, I think quality of a loving kindness comes through giving a space for loving kindness to grow, to experience. So in our daily, so in our life, whatever we're going to call, if we look at it, how should I feel nurtured and fulfilled? How I can feel nurtured. Because once we're able to create that emotional space, awareness space in a daily basis, that kind of expansion is not necessarily specific. Yes, now I feel space, now I feel I can breathe. And that's the nurturing part. So I'm saying generally yes, any thought arise and just kind of observing in that things process, that kind of like mindfulness journey is really good. But I think if we do more meditation or practice about undoing.
So don't engage with it, you're saying?
Yeah, I think.
Just back up and not engage.
Non-engaging will be, there's if you're doing for I think non-engaging and creating that space. Because it looks like our thoughts are all the time hungry for something, wants to engage. It's like a hungry ghost, it's constantly, it's taking too many things. If, basically, taking everything, unhealthy things, same like physical, problem. So same way, I think maybe the meditation is so much about fasting. It's a fasting, it is a mental fasting. Last time we talked about a little bit fasting. It is maybe the meditation is sometimes people, I'm doing healing, I'm doing what you do this fasting, different, several weeks you just only have a juice, or maybe the meditation is basically as simple as you're trying to do a thought fasting. What do you think?
I read this thing that said, don't accept it and don't reject it. You're just kind of there. Like if somebody comes in and is annoying, that could be like your thought. So you just it's just there and then it goes away. That's kind of like fasting, like you back out and you don't.
But we really like to build. We really want to do something. This is really boring to just to not engage. We are encouraged to engage, isn't it?
Well, I liked the analogy of ground, like for a plant. That makes sense to me. Like the building part is maybe meditating on bodhicitta.
Exactly.
You prepare the ground first.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that will be one perfect example, creating the space, the soil, the space. Maybe in meditation we need to kind of see it as creating that space, creating that condition. Maybe not hurrying to building the house. Maybe more pay attention. Even when we build the house, not hurrying to bringing things inside. Creating that balance, So I think it's really this inner mindfulness of a mind. That's okay. What kind of stretch and exercise? Pacific meditation is, what you call when you go to the massage therapy, then there is a time that the therapist will give you their ankle, what is it? Elbow. In the actual loving kindness meditation, when we do, we should feel when people give you elbow, then how you say, shout. You loving kindness meditation to go so smooth is surprising. Now it says, I'm doing loving kindness because it's supposed to, loving kindness meditation is supposed to give an elbow for ego. It's the ego. Oh, there's like, why are you doing loving kindness meditation? The ego have to react. If ego is not reacting, then ego already controlled the loving kindness meditation. It already took part of the ego journey. In a really loving kindness meditation, when we start, we have to feel the reaction of the ego.
So then what? You feel the reaction of the ego, and then what?
Okay, so that's good news, I think, first. If our loving kindness meditation go too smooth, okay, wow. How is surprised the ego accepted. It's so surprised, ego welcomed.
Well, I think sometimes it's too smooth because it gets rote. And how do you know that word?
Rote.
Rote, like you do it every day. Boring.
Oh, okay.
So even bodhicitta, loving kindness, oh yeah.
Okay.
Loving kindness, bodhicitta, and you don't wake up.
Exactly.
So you need to give us an example of how to wake up.
Wake up, yeah, exactly. I think it's getting so kind of like a scheduled and going so smooth because ego took already controlled.
Yeah,
It says,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yes. So I think loving kindness meditation to do a really deep, ego reaction. The elbow need to touch for the ego first. So like, yeah, those specific meditation is, again, ego and the human intention. Ego is kind of like the full app, the full program of the, who manage. It's kind of like it communicates with the human motivation. So fundamentally, I think meditation is all about communication with the ego. How we communicate, fundamentally, meditation is a way to communicate, way to negotiate, way to communicate with the ego. Otherwise, we can do mindfulness and loving kindness under the management of the ego. Right. So here I think. Maybe the definition of a meditation is basically fundamentally, can we have a different management? Can we maybe transform the management style? It's bad management. All the time we say things go wrong is a bad management. Not necessarily, person itself is a bad, the manager itself not necessarily, but the way we're managing. So maybe this whole about concept of samsara is, bad management. So here meditation is, about communication. Maybe it is a communication. It is meditation. It is a communicating fundamentally, at the end of the day, our motivation and our ego is the responsibility. These are the CEO of our existence. So I mean, again, when we say ego is a kind of way it runs human motivation and human thoughts which brings the driven human motivation wants to do, all that things coming through ego. Sometimes in the sutras they say like the ego is becoming cause of enlightenment. Of course. So, and
Because you use that energy somehow?
it's not necessarily used. Without that, we cannot engage anything. Without the ego, without this sense of self and a driving energy combination, this is what really we engage.
So how do you engage in the ego? Like if you have the ego, like Pam was saying, and then it's running the show, how do you put the ego in its place, or whatever you want to call it, to make it so it's not running the show? Like when you think about death, or...
I think...
So you like separate, so you can...
I think in conventional world, maybe when the managements go wrong, you fire the CEO. But in a spiritual journey, I don't think so. We should fire the ego itself. But we give a second chance, but the changing the way of management. There's no way to fire ego. And end of the day, I think that it can only transform. We cannot replace. I don't think, that's my thinking. Whatever we label, ego or whatever, it is just our human spirit, human consciousness, the way human consciousness works with the human motivation. Once with the human motivation is part of the human consciousness. But everything's about itself is not negative. The management is not good. The way it runs. So,
I was connecting, kind of relate to this too, near the beginning when you were talking about giving their mind space to breathe. And so connecting this to what ego is. And I'm thinking, depending on what the definition of ego is, and if I'm particularly thinking with needing to fire the management, that to fire the management of the self-centered ego, it just thinks about me and puts me above everything else. And that maybe giving that mind space will help. And I think of that self-centeredness as being like this. So giving the mind space will maybe help that dissipate.
yes. No, it's a good question. Once the ego manages self very negatively, it will going to manage everybody badly. So it comes down to how it manages, because ego, as you're saying, is really kind of closing up. It's only self. So fundamentally, there is in human or any living being have a sense of self. There is a sense of I. There is a sense of something that's kind of like a me and other. That's kind of like a natural response. And now that kind of like a sense of self, how far it takes only me, or it's open up into that. Then it takes many different layers. So our habit sense of self is there, but we're not able to keep into the balance. So there is a naturally creating constantly habit, and somehow slowly, gradually, it becomes kind of more and more tight into the basically only self, only me. So, so maybe the meditation is really trying to creating that, sense of self, which is the foundation for motivation, sense of self, which is the foundation for inspiration. But maybe the meditation is all about trying to keeping, not going further, falling into the extreme. Is basically trying to keep in sense of self into the balance. So like for example, meditation about emptiness is fundamentally trying to bringing sense of self into the balance, in the middle way. Fundamentally, therapy for human, meditation of emptiness is considered as the most powerful, but I think fundamentally, it is really trying to make that understanding and that therapy to bringing sense of self into the kind of like in the balance. Once we're able to stay into that balance sense of self, yeah, I think that is enlightenment maybe. Something we draw many. Right now we're falling into the extreme. One extreme furthermore is like a too narrow sense of self. So meditation about emptiness is the actual action to bringing sense of self into the middle, and bodhicitta is a kind of the motivation to sense of self to bring it into the middle. So whole teaching and practice and all that things, maybe really if we kind of draw, that's really what we are trying to do here. We are trying to keep this balance. Here we really, sometimes in the airplane when you go, they say like, can someone volunteer to stay back there where the balance is? It is all about the balance. It's all about the sense of balance of sense of self. So maybe that's the fun. Once we kind of like what you call these people who do this physical therapy, but it's not like a big and push and kind of squeeze, and they just kind of do kind of gentle. But you go, they do like gentle manipulation. They kind of gently, and then somehow it heals for everything. It's not about like with the elbow. Walter used to do that.
Yeah.
This kind of therapy, this kind of gently shifting, is not big thing they do, rubs and nothing. This is kind of therapy, but it really makes a big difference, somehow surprisingly. So it's kind of like a deep treatment. It's maybe this kind of fundamentally meditation of emptiness is something therapy or treatment, something healing, in kind of deep healing is not about like an elbow and hitting something. It is much more fundamentally. It's all to keeping into the right balance, into the sense of self. And once individual we have that, and basically from there everything's kind of flow. Our action flow, compassion and loving kindness and anything. So maybe in a physical level, in a daily basis, we want to keep balance element. In a spirit level, we want to keep balanced sense of self. Maybe that's the fundamental, And once we have that balance, we are ready to creating new house, to creating bodhicitta house, to creating all the practices.
balanced self that you talked about, is it still subject to conditioning? Is it still reacting to past actions through conditioning?
Absolutely. I think it is the balance itself is a breathing life. It is a responding, but can we lose the balance? Yes. Once you set the balance, is a kind of locked situation? No, I think the balance it can be steadily kind of like alive, like earth. It's shifting, it's kind of moving. Basically what I'm feeling like, yes, even you have you create the sense of self as a balance, but can I be reacting things for condition arise? Yes, I will react, but maybe difference is how you say recovering process, maybe very quick. It doesn't really knock you down and
Drag you with it for a while.
yeah, it's like it's not necessarily entire fall apart. Possibility fall entire fall apart? Yes. This is a journey, but we are very happy to able to put together. That balance, that's whole kind of, again, it is, and do we want to lock it? Do we want to keep that? It is forever, like something that you don't have to guard, that balance, sense of self all the time. Philosophically, this concept of a truth of a cessation. I think the truth of a cessation is almost like kind of like now, sense of self, that balance, you are kind of achieved that forever. Maybe it's like, that's what is possibility is presenting when the truth of a cessation. So of course, this whole, like for even the physical element to keep a balance require practice and discipline and so on and so forth as usual. And the sense of self balance require practice and discipline and so on and so forth, kind of like naturally, all these causes and conditions. So so I think no. Get lost. Basically what I'm trying to looking, like for example, His Holiness. And when he one day myself and my teacher, we went to see in a private audience with His Holiness. So right before he was teaching, so we had an audience, a private audience, and then he was talking about some subject. And then, of course, it's time to go for teaching, and then he continued the talk in the teaching. And of course, it was a. So I think if we look at if we don't think about like Avalokiteshvara emanation, Buddha emanation as just look at lens of a human being. If you look at for His Holiness, sense of self is his sense of self. I think it is a. It's not like it is it's just kind of like how you say it's
Broad, big.
it is not defensive sense of self, and we all the time in our life defensive sense of self is all the time mode of a defensive sense of self. So it's like so relax, And then maybe we'll say, oh, like, yeah, of course, everybody say yes for him. But not necessarily. He's facing lots of challenge in his life. When you look lens of just kind of as a human level, I think that really makes, yes, there's a plenty challenges coming, but the way of never as a defensive of a sense of self. So, that becomes maybe the fundamental of a, when I say balance, I think, samsara comes when the sense of self is unbalanced. Basically we say ignorance and all this is whatever we're going to talk, different, whatever label we make it, but at the end, in a daily basis, my sense of self, if I kind of becomes a defensive sense of self, I can become obnoxious so at the fundamental level, maybe our practice is all about creating that balance. And why, due to that balance and sense of self, all the individual problems related with attachment, related to anger, related with jealousy and everything, maybe they're kind of sets of self. They kind of fade. So maybe this wisdom meditation is a kind of Prajna Paramita Sutra. Maybe this is all about how we can work this into this healing or this therapy we can do in a fundamental level. So when we say emptiness, and then there's a teaching of emptiness, it's saying there is no inherent self. Because a defensive self is really about inherent self. This very defensive sense of self is all about this. The main ingredient for the defensive sense of self is the inherent self. The minute it locked into the inherent self, that's it. It becomes very defensive. So meditation of emptiness is all about just basically message saying, okay, you get caught into the defensive sense of self, let go that inherent self. That's the message. Is talking now? Nagarjuna is talking, okay, all sentient being now, you need to let go of the inherent self. Now you're caught into the defensive sense of self. If once that happens, entire world will going to be troubled. Okay, so then what's this emptiness things? This emptiness, there's the emptiness. I think for us, when you say emptiness, we should say, what? I think we should have that reaction, isn't it? Are you sure? What do you mean emptiness? Emptiness, I think, is maybe more educating. To educate. I don't know, it's like a... Basically, sometimes, this is clear, there's nothing there. Clear, nothing there. He says everything's clear, nothing's there. No threats, nothing. It's clear. Basically, Buddha is saying, we all are freaked out, all sentient beings saying, oh, there's something, and we are get scared, and it's basically Buddha's then this investigator comes and says, no, there's nothing there. Calm down, there's nothing there. Our paranoia, and it's basically, again, emptiness is almost kind of like a clear. It's nothing there now. You know, almost like emptiness is saying like, don't need to be paranoid. Don't. Okay, so unhealthy sense of self comes, defensive sense of self comes once we're paranoid. It's natural, our human nature. Once we're paranoid, when we feel something, we get defensive. This is natural. So teaching of emptiness is educating, kind of like putting the message. There's no threat. Now again we say like, so threat have two things. Threat, that external threat, and there's internal threat. Teaching of emptiness is about internal threat. Threat that we created karmically, and that threat is the inherent self. And teaching of emptiness basically is taking out this, what's called this yellow, they put this when they investigate. The yellow tape.
Police tape.
The crime tape. Crime tape.
Crime tape. Emptiness, they're taking out all that threat. There's nothing there. Okay, now free to move. Free to move. Free to move. So almost like a teaching of emptiness is a kind of a telling, educating. I think, and then of course, is a like. Is emptiness basically saying is everything is a false alarm? Whatever going on is telling like this is a false alarm. Is it, you know? Okay. Anyway, so basically, this again. You know, now when particularly meditation of emptiness comes, is a really weighs the balance. You know, relief from threat of inherent self and a relief of threat of a conventional self. And weighs, there's not only general balance, sense of self, but it becomes much more specific. It's more specific, you know, so it's almost you're kind of like absorbing much more detail that, you know, I don't want to become totally careless. At the same time, I'll be cautious, but I won't be overly cautious, paranoid. So here, these two things, kind of totally kind of careless becomes one extreme, overly protected, overly cautious becomes a paralyzing. Okay, so in the same way, in a sense of self, over here, meditation of emptiness is all about getting into the kind of like a right balance of a sense of self. You know, so realization of emptiness, although we might use this realization, but at the end, it is abiding. It is a being rather than realization. Realization may be required to abide into the emotionally, spiritually, abide into the sense of self, into the balance. So it's interesting in the Buddha's teaching, you know, Prajna Paramita Sutra, from my point of view, individually karmic situation to heal, it not necessarily individual have a therapy. Don't need to have therapy. It giving suggestion, sense of self, of a human spirit, once you're able to heal that, all these different situations and different karma can be naturally healed. So the wisdom therapy is fundamentally sense of self not to get distracted, sense of self not to fall into the extreme, sense of self bringing into the balance. And that's the kind of like the, by bringing not defensive and offensive sense of self, and that's the, somehow it heals all the karmic, different karmic consequences and karmic journeys. It's not necessarily individual. So therefore I feel like these days are like a, of course I'm in the therapy, but therapy have many different things, but like this one, I was reflecting one time, and also one student asked like there's a child time is abused, and now like what will be the best to therapy? I mean like she herself is therapy. I thought like not necessarily specifically dealing with that specific situation, maybe self-purpose find, maybe the therapy not so much, okay, issue is that is what's, she's kind of like stopping, but now maybe the way we're working, maybe the self, the person is now here to finding purpose, able to heal. The present self finding purpose in the future can heal past abuse. It's not necessary to go back into the past. That's what I thought. So, like the fundamental way to heal is maybe that will be the best. The present self, finding purpose, showing purpose. Basically, showing purpose is the condition, basically the sense of self, bringing worth and value and purpose. It's naturally can heal the past. It's not going to forget, it's not necessarily specifically, but I think I think the meditation of emptiness is all about present self to bring it into the balance. That we're talking this, once we bring in that balance, all the million different karmic habits, not necessarily need to be dealt individually, be able to heal. So sense of self healthy is fundamentally, so that's connected with the ego, that's connected with the human motivation, human spirit, and all that. So I don't know, that's what I'm thinking. Okay. So fundamental, as I talked about, the meditation of emptiness, realization of emptiness, we need to kind of, it is some kind of exercise. Maybe we should use word exercise. Can we exercise emotionally, able to stay into the balanced sense of self? What that exercise will be. And that may be, that kind of exercise is the wisdom exercise, maybe so-called as. Why it called wisdom exercise? Because that exercise is trying to unreality, which is the inherent self, to bring into the reality self. So it is now, the Buddha's teaching is that all the problem in the world, individually, personally, nation-wise, in all this discrimination, all this is like all the problems coming from within the ego. So, so yeah, I think balance. When you say healthy, this word healthy is really wonderful. Where we define healthy is a balance. The balanced sense of self. So maybe, people who have a, I don't know, balanced sense of self, it is can be strong, can be formed, can be nurturing, healthy sense of self or balanced sense of self is not, individual kind of formed or bent. I don't know, this is, right now, for us to be strong, we have to be extreme sense of self, defensive sense of self. Healthy, almost like kind of fight mode. Oh, now I'm defending myself. So maybe at the end, fundamentally, all this Buddha's teaching, when he says there's no self, or maybe he says that self is dependent origination. Now today we are using the word healthy, balanced self. So maybe at the end, all the teaching is story about self. And I'm just wondering, like when Buddha said there's no self, I'm not. It's like the Buddha went to identity crisis. like, am I Hindu or am I Buddhist? No, it's just joking. No, once it's kind of like the philosophically and spiritually, when you kind of separate from his own kind of culture and tradition. Once you kind of this whole self business, there's no such a self. Why we take it so serious? So anyway, but yeah, maybe this whole thing, search for self, not so much the purpose of the self, not so much what, just basically search for nature of the self. Maybe it's like a kind of like a accidentally somehow, there's nothing there. It's not kind of pre-planned to come to that conclusion. It's maybe surprise for Buddha. Maybe Buddha never expecting this kind of. This must be shocking for Buddha when he described this. This is kind of weird. This is kind of interesting. It must be kind of like whoa, this is a whole different. It must be huge surprise. What it can bring, the potential, surprise. He wasn't expecting that result. If he's already expecting that result, of course he's trying to find something. He's doing all his retreat in 6 years. But the things that after when he get enlightened, there's an expression, he said like, I found something, I don't want to share with anybody. Everybody will think I'm crazy. I'll keep quiet. Yeah, maybe something's very potential, something that nobody will accept. Yeah, there's this, I think, this. Okay. So basically, meditation in a daily basis, what we do in spiritual practice, if we lose that point, trying to bring him into the balanced sense of self, if we lose that, I think the most important part is like, okay, this is why I'm doing, to bring him into that. Otherwise, we might get lost into the doing things and lose the key point in the first place. So I think this is, once we say, okay, this is what I'm doing, at least keep knocking that door. And then I think it will be less complicated. It will get less complicated. Because sometimes spiritual practice can become complicated. So if we keep understood the point, and that all the practice, these different suggestions and different way of doing, there's some kind of easiness that, because we know the fundamental point. Once we lost the fundamental point and we just kind of follow, and there's so many different ways of doing things, and then we get kind of like that different way of doing becomes the fundamental. We didn't saw the purpose why we're doing the different way and different approach. So I think, end of the day, maybe we might come up with our own things to way to balance. Coming into that balance, sense of self, not defensive, not offensive. And somehow flourish through that kind of sense of self. Maybe this, but when you say like that, in a life, too much obstacle, things are not moving smooth, or treatment is not getting good, treatment is not effective, then we ask to doing prayer, we're trying to try and see this and that, and the fundamental trigger is still we kept the trigger to do all that things, and we just show that other things. Can you fix this one? Still trigger, I will keep it to make this imbalance. So, I think this. Once we kind of like feel, the pilot is within the mice. Okay, I can navigate. There's a way to navigate. Way to kind of, if we kind of rewire, re-educate, rethink, a situation can happen. Okay, I'll manage through internally, sense of self. Okay, here, I'm reacting, sense of self getting in this gauge coming to the sense of self, just going to the red. This gauge is just going into the red. Sense of self is kind of like the pressure of a sense of self is in the 200. Maybe it's all about, in physical level we talk blood pressure. The blood pressure is the key problem. And in a spiritual and emotional, the pressure of a sense of self is maybe the key thing. So all the practice, all the meditation, basically bringing down that pressure. All the time we go to doctors and say, you need blood pressure, you need to get down. Sometimes some people have low blood pressure, we bring up a little bit, but most of the time we have all the high blood pressure. So all the things I gave towards to bringing down that pressure. And maybe spiritual practice is all about bringing down all the practice and meditation, everything is bringing down that pressure. And that pressure is creating unhealth, spiritually, emotionally. This sense, and that pressure in physical we call blood pressure. In a spiritual and emotional we call like a self-grasping pressure. If we look at from that point of view, my blood pressure is really good, my sense of self is really good, I feel really good, and maybe we don't need to do meditation. Well, fine, that's doing good. Well, now it's getting worse, so I need to stop all the graspings. I need to start the grasping diet. Yeah, I think we need to orient it. I think fundamentally the practice, and I think like sometimes we felt like, you know. Okay, what things else? What things else? A kind of strange talk. Of course.
Well, one thing that I was thinking about, and it feels it's related to today, was when you were here the last time. We were talking about the night before with our meditations, we're preparing our minds for the next day. We're like preparing for the next day. And I've been kind of making those like connections with what you're talking about today. It's almost like getting into preparing our minds the night before. Feels like it's kind of trying to get ourselves into a cycle of, as you talked about, giving that the mind room to breathe. And so, like, if, like, for instance, I could really get into the habit of doing that at night, like doing meditation or thinking whatever, just to kind of really calm the mind, then I can go into the next day with a much broader mind, and then kind of using that broader mind to keeping my mind open and breathing. So so just kind of thinking about that and trying to make some connections between how to like keep that going as much as possible.
You know, I think while you're saying that, I was kind of curious. Sometimes we say, I want to meditate in bodhicitta. I want to. Like, for example, we recite four images: may all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness. That's wonderful and beautiful. But to become, maybe we should have one opposite of a prayer of a four image. To, like almost like before doing the actual four image, like, kind of like I want all the happiness and cause of happiness. I want all the happiness and cause of happiness. I want to free all the suffering, my suffering and cause of suffering. Maybe something where we touch.
Okay.
And also sometimes when you say like, maybe bodhicitta is, yes, perfect. But we should have something before that to prepare for bodhicitta. I think we're missing something when we go so quick in the bodhicitta, in the four image. We forget to scan something. And we scan only the last page. The printer, we scan only the last page. There's a most important document. There's a page number 1, 2, 3, which basically says, I want to happiness and cause of happiness. That's important page we didn't print. So I think, like maybe lots of practice, we need to kind of like take one step back and look at it a little bit carefully. It's kind of like sometimes we're just trying to jump other side and really not pay attention to what's happening here. In some way, it would be very strange to recite, I want to be always a guru, like, I want happiness and all the cause of happiness. Like all the four images would be put in the opposite way as a practice session. It is kind of strange, but it also can be very true.
Yeah.
It is also kind of emotionally very true, but it is. So when we say the key thing over here is yeah, when you're preparing for that one, something needs to be looked at it. And maybe we say like, no, this is very obvious. This is the problem. I want to get out from that. But in a meditation practice, we need to connect the dot. Noticing that, and how I can shift this one. Noticing that and how I can shift that. Without judgment. Sometimes like we behave. I know this. Why did you? There's almost like abandonment of that negative, that kind of things. Is a strong comes from based on judgment towards that. That's my own karma. That's my thing. Cannot kind of ignore and get out and judge it and then kind of leave it. So I think like the one example from the night before, how you prepare for the next one. In the same way, somehow, acknowledgement and recognition without judgmental, and then state of that, then dissolving that into a loving kindness and for individual practice. So there's maybe it is a much more complete story of a four individual practice. So if a morning, if we're going to do a four individual practice, it means there's a practice of non-judgmental, but kind of being aware, almost like a scanning the egotistical behavior. Without judging, like same time like mindfulness, without judging, you kind of like really recognized, and you're not trying to kind of like repress and throw it out, kind of like looking into it. So this. It's the opposite of for your ritual prayer. Maybe we, like for the bodhicitta, we say, purpose of benefiting sentient being, I want to become enlightenment. Maybe we need to look at it, purpose for my own benefit, I want to become enlightenment. Maybe we should kind of state that, and kind of without judging, and then transforming that gradually to purpose of no. Then you go to applying the equanimity and all that things, and really gradually transformation, and then you begin kind of honest expression, purpose of benefiting, I want to become enlightened. Yes, perfect.
I have a question, because something you were talking about earlier, when we start all those, I want to do this and do that we actually need to feel where we actually are right now. It's that where you think about we need to like, this is where I actually am. This is what I actually want. So.
Exactly. Okay. I think, we have to, sometimes almost spiritual practice becomes method to distract where we are and what we are feeling. And then we kind of distract from that, and here is all good stuff. And then not really address the key issue. So therefore it is a surprise to we are able to say, I want to meditate in bodhicitta and giving guided meditation. If you give guided meditation in compassion, loving kindness, there should be somebody rebelled, like what you're talking about. You should have like it's if we just kind of follow, if there's no eruption, if there's no debate, if there's no discussion, I'm not talking like external, but internal dialogue with ego. Then how can be bodhicitta meditation? From the actual bodhisattva point of view, it is a clear statement to the ego behavior, saying this is not right. There's not equanimity there. There's not kindness there. There's no loving kindness there. There's no, placing these out to. So I think the key thing here maybe ultimately wisdom and ignorance maybe is two sides of one coin. There's not necessarily two different tracks. The healing process of ignorance transforms into the wisdom. And it's not so much that third person as a wisdom comes and treats the ignorance. It's just as a one track transformation. Okay, it's okay, let's take a break. Thank you.
Thank you for dedication.
Yes, challenge.
All sentient beings from their self-living, may their wishes may that form
Okay.
I think we may have room for all of us to eat around the table. People would like to do that to a large group.
Around your festive table.